Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So I got a message from one of my 675,000 subscribers who happens to be very knowledgeable about what is going on the Ukraine border, and I want to share that information with you because I do believe it is very important that you know what's right around the corner. So let's get to it. Okay, before we dive into this video, I want to plug my Jase case once again. I just actually got the case in the mail. So this is the case you get. If you don't know, Jase case is a way that you can get real deal antibiotics prescribed by a doctor. Super easy for emergency use. It actually says that on the pill bottle. I can't really show you it. Maybe I can for like a split second. But I had a post taken down from Instagram, of all places, because I showed that. Yes, Instagram doesn't like Big Pharma. Well, at least not this kind of Big Pharma. Emergency Antibiotic Guide by Jase case. So you get amoxicillin, azithromycin, ciprofloxacin, doxycycline, and metronidazole. Anthrax, bites, plague, skin infection, tetanus, tularemia, pneumonia, urinary tract infection, traveler's diarrhea, a variety of other uses. Antibiotics will be an absolute lifesaver, and it's what's going to distinguish a truly complete medical kit from a standard advanced first aid kit. If you have this level of medication, then you are ready for whatever SHTF can throw at us. Now, I received an email from somebody who appears to have a different perspective about what's going on in Ukraine, but it seems very informed about the details and the specifics, okay, of the civil conflict that's going on in the Ukraine and how Russia and NATO play into that. Now, I want to say right from the get-go, I'm not saying that this perspective is 100% correct. I'm just saying it's a perspective for you to consider. And while this perspective that this person puts forth appears to be more sympathetic to the Russian cause, I want to make it abundantly clear that this is in no way an excuse for any atrocity which was perpetuated under the Kremlin for the last 100 years. This is not a pro-communistic, pro-Russian peace. However, it is a perspective, so I'm sure that if you took the other side of this coin, and you would find the truth somewhere in the middle, but it's very important that you listen to this because he's basically spelling out what's going to happen next. Now, I don't want to name the person who provided this information to me. If they ask that I do so, I will do that in a future video. So I'm just going to read this to you. It's a little bit long and it's a little bit detailed, but you need to understand what is going on in the ground. And this is all in quotes, okay? What actually happened in 2014 is that Ukraine was being offered an economic cooperation agreement with the EU and a competing offer from Russia. The president, Viktor Yanukovych, was democratically elected and was pro-Russian, having been elected with the help of the Russian majority in the eastern regions in opposition to Ukrainian nationalists in western Ukraine. Okay, so we're seeing age-old East versus West divide, just like what happened in Germany with the Berlin Wall kind of is happening in the Ukraine. Yanukovych wanted to sign an agreement with Russia. In the meantime, U.S. neoconservatives within the Obama administration hatched a plan to overthrow Yanukovych, install a Ukrainian nationalist government, Ukrainize the country by restricting the Russian language and Russian culture, and most importantly, drive Russia out of Crimea, where it had a binding agreement with Ukraine to operate its naval base at, I can't pronounce it, Sevastopol. I'm going to get 100 comments telling me how to pronounce it. Seize the naval base, then have Ukraine join the EU and NATO, thus giving NATO the Russian naval base. Okay? When eastern Ukraine and Crimea learned of the coup in Kiev, they revolted and requested help from Russia. Russia would never allow Ukraine to seize the naval base, so they used forces they had in Crimea to disarm the Ukrainian military there, without a shot being fired, and took control of Crimea. In addition, they sent advisors and equipment to eastern Ukraine to assist the militias being formed to resist the Ukrainian military. In the conflict that followed in 2014 and 2015, stick with me, guys. I know some of you are probably falling asleep, but you got to stick with me because it's very important, the conclusion that this individual makes, okay? The LDPR forces defeated the Ukrainian military with occasional assistance from Russia cross-border long-range artillery. Okay, so the LDPR forces are the forces within the Ukraine that are Russian-backed. Subsequently, Russia, France, Germany, and Ukraine worked out the Minsk package of measures. These measures required Ukraine to negotiate directly with the LDPR government, not Russia, which is not a party to the internal conflict, change Ukraine's constitution to give the LDPR autonomy, remove all foreign forces from Ukraine, and other measures. Ukraine signed on to the agreement, and the agreement became a UNSC resolution binding Ukraine to its implementation. That means United Nations Security Council, okay? Subsequent to 2015, due to the pressure of the current president, Poroshenko, and the then current president, Zelensky, by the right-wing nationalists, Ukraine has failed to implement any of the measures required by the Minsk agreement. There is also considerable pressure on the Ukraine government from the US, CIA, and neocons to continue antagonizing Russia. I really hope nobody comes after me for revealing this information, okay? So Ukraine continued for the last 7 years to conduct repeated violations of the ceasefire, conducting artillery attacks on LDPR villages, cross-border raids to which the LDPR forces responded as necessary, okay? So this is shaping a narrative that Russia is on the defensive here. Now, stick with me. The US, CIA, and the neocons, having failed in their attempt to use Ukraine against Russia, apparently came up with a new plan. They decided to sacrifice Ukraine in a war with Russia. This would enable the US to demonize Russia further, cut off the EU from Russian energy sources, invigorate NATO, and a variety of other agendas. Just wait, it gets more interesting. So in spring 2021, Ukraine mobilized half its military to the contact line established by the ceasefire agreement. Russia, presumably having a good intelligence network and surveillance inside Ukraine, became aware of the evident intent to retake the LDPR by force. They responded by building up a reaction force near the border of Ukraine. The size and speed with which this was done apparently took Ukraine and the West by surprise, and the attack was postponed. Again, I don't know if any of this is true, but it sounds like this person has done their homework. In the fall, the CIA and the neocons apparently decided to implement a plan to get the war started with or without Ukraine's permission. The details are unclear, but we can see the external effect. First, a propaganda campaign that Russia was intending to invade Ukraine was concocted. According to experts in Russia, Russia has absolutely no desire to occupy Ukraine. Putin has no interest in rebuilding the Soviet Union. According to this person, what Putin and Russia want is to stop the expansion of NATO, which has been proceeding apace since 1997, despite during the collapse of the Soviet Union that NATO would not expand 1 inch beyond the reunified Germany. This promise has been violated by Clinton and every US president since. Interesting. Russia, seeing what was evidently intended, decided to confront the US over NATO expansion. They put forth 2 security treaties, one for the US and one for NATO, several months ago. They demanded that Ukraine and Georgia not be invited into NATO. Not that the Ukraine can be in any event, because it has an internal conflict which violates NATO protocol for acceptance, not to mention its major economic issues. So what they're saying is, even if Ukraine wanted to enter NATO because of the civil unrest, it wouldn't be able to happen, okay? And that military assets deployed in Poland, Romania, and other former Warsaw Pact states be rolled back, essentially to restore the balance that was there in 1997. The US and NATO have so far refused to consider these security guarantees. Russia has apparently assumed that would be the response from the West. Russia has warned that if not given the required security guarantees, it would take military steps to place the US and NATO at the same degree of risk that the US and NATO has placed Russia in as a result of NATO expansion, specifically strategic weapons installed in Poland and Romania. Now, in terms of Ukraine, Russia is prepared to react to any new Ukraine offensive or provocation against LDPR. This is why it has moved some forces from the military regions inside Russia to areas in European Russia. These forces are not on the border of Ukraine. They are permanent bases within about 120 miles or so from the Ukraine border, from which they can be deployed if necessary. But most of these are permanent bases that have always been in the military region of Russia. Now, I have seen some satellite shots that kind of contradict this, where there's clearly a buildup in places where there wasn't before, so I can't really attest to the truth of what he's saying here. Anyways, we'll go on. The reason Russia has enhanced its preparations for a potential conflict is undoubtedly because Russian intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, ISR, has informed it that Ukraine continues to prepare for a new offensive on the LDPR. Reports in the last couple of days indicate that Ukraine forces are bringing up heavy artillery and multiple barrel rocket launchers on the contact line, as well as other measures. Observers have noted that the last two times Russia was involved in conflicts was during an Olympics in 2008. Georgia attacked two breakaway republics during the Sochi Olympics, and the 2014 Maidan crisis occurred during the previous Beijing Olympics. This suggests that I don't know if the Olympics were in Beijing in 2014. Okay, I think they might have got those reversed. I think Sochi was Sochi in 2004? Anyways, I can't remember. This suggests that a new Ukraine offensive on the LDPR may be intended during the February Beijing Olympics. This is why Russia is taking steps to prepare for that eventuality. In addition, note that there are 9 or 10, depending on who's counting, NATO military exercises on Ukraine soil intended to begin in February and continue in stages for much of the year. These exercises are twice the size of the ones held in 2021, totaling 64,000 NATO troops, hundreds of aircraft and ships. It is expected by observers that these exercises may be intended to act as a cover for or even participate in another Ukraine assault on the LDPR, or at least to complicate a Russian response if such an offensive occurs. This is the real risk of NATO involvement in a Ukraine-Russia conflict. Neither NATO nor the U.S. conventional forces currently stationed in Europe are any significant threat to Russian forces, according to a number of military analysts. Some 14 war games conducted by NATO and the U.S. over the last several years have always resulted in a Russian win. This is why it is unlikely that NATO or the U.S. will directly intervene in a Ukraine-Russian conflict. This reduces the probability of WW3 occurring if a conflict occurs. However, anything is possible, of course, so it would behoove NATO and the U.S. to refrain from assisting Ukraine directly in a conflict. Fortunately, there is considerable evidence that several major NATO nations, France and Germany in particular, are not interested in doing so. They are not even interested in implementing the U.S. sanctions being talked about, as most of the sanctions would cause major economic damage to the EU and possible blowback to the U.S. economy as well. This individual provides a few links to a couple of YouTubers that I'll post in the description. Again, if you don't know, the LDPR is the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia. Okay, they're considered far-right populists. I don't know anything about them, so I'm not going to begin to speculate. You can go and do your own research on that. I just thought it was important in order to understand this information fog of war that we're in, that we're really trying to get a handle on both perspectives here, because it's very easy to just presume that one side is an evil boogeyman who wants to conquer the world, and our side is just full of innocent people who want to defend ourselves. Now, I think that, again, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but I hope this sheds a bit of light and an alternative viewpoint. Now, again, I don't think this is necessarily saying that one side is bad or one side is good. It's basically just saying that whether it's NATO or the former Soviet states that are still kind of under the auspices of Russian control, they both want their national security, okay? And this is now at loggerheads, and of course, there's a potential conflict ensuing. It sounds like that the Ukraine, by this person's analysis, will be some kind of proxy sandbox for a war. Now, you can hear the clear language with the Biden administration that they don't want World War III, okay? So they want to kind of keep their troops in the neighbor's house while Ukraine's getting home invaded, or according to this, it's the other way around. So that basically Ukraine is being used as a proxy to try to undermine the Russian hegemony in that part of the world. Is that true? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't shoot the messenger. That's all I am. You guys take care, stay safe, and don't forget, get your Jase case, get your meds, get your antibiotics. This is a service which is, I think, a game changer for preppers and survivalists. Don't forget, use the coupon code Canadian Prepper to get 20 bucks off until February 10th. Then after that, that wholesale is kaput. So go check it out. Stay prepped, stay ready. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.